The alpha from our arranged marriage is a stubborn, prideful heir with a sharp tongue. On our wedding night, he told me I was completely average and that he would never fall for me. Yet, in the dead of night, he tried to sneak into my bed, only for me to kick him right off. He scrambled for an excuse, his pride still talking, saying, "People will laugh at us if we don't sleep in the same bed." The very next moment, he turned around and slipped into a sheer black mesh top. It left absolutely nothing to the imagination, perfectly framing his broad shoulders and narrow waist, putting his sharp, striking physique on full display. Across his chest rested a glittering body chain that swayed gently with his every move, exuding an irresistible magnetism and a cool, breathtaking allure. "Darling," he murmured, "do you like me like this?" Main text. The warm orange overhead lights cast a hazy, intoxicating glow. Stepping out of the bathroom with damp hair, Kevin instantly spotted Elijah lounging on the velvet sofa. A tie hung loosely beneath his Adam's apple, and with 3 shirt buttons popped open, the sharp, aggressive lines of his abs were on full display. His long legs rested casually across the coffee table. Kevin stopped a couple of feet away, holding a bowl of hangover soup. The once calm atmosphere instantly crackled with tension. As Elijah lazily half-opened his eyes, the room's lighting seemed to superheat. The air itself rippled and warped from the sheer temperature, casting a dangerous, smoldering red aura over the glass on the table. Elijah scoffed, sending a scorching visual heatwave straight at Kevin. "Kevin, don't think just because my mom shoved us together, you're going to win my heart." Unfazed, Kevin set the porcelain bowl down on the table with a sharp clink. The next second, the world spun. Elijah shot up, his long fingers firmly gripping Kevin's chin, tilting his head from side to side to inspect him. The dim light hit the sharp, aggressive arch of Elijah's brow. His narrowed eyes brimmed with wild arrogance. "My mom said you were a good, docile little thing, but as far as Omegas go, you're honestly nothing special." Tiny sparks of fiery red embers seemed to pop right in front of Kevin's nose. But Kevin didn't even bat an eyelash. His gaze was like a frozen spring, staring back at the alpha in complete, utter silence. They deadlocked for 3 seconds before Elijah lost his nerve under that completely unbothered stare. He clicked his tongue in frustration. The warping, dark red aura around him instantly wilted. Dropping his hand, he threw himself heavily back onto the sofa. Kevin's tone remained completely flat. "Your mom just made this. Drink it." Elijah turned his head away, his jawline tight with stubborn resistance. "I'm not drinking that trash." Without a second of hesitation, Kevin leaned over, picked up the bowl, and turned to leave. Suddenly, a scorching hot hand clamped down on his wrist. Caught in this awkward tug-of-war, Elijah leaned down and took a massive gulp of the soup. Finishing it, he leaned forward. A blast of heat, heavy with the scent of alcohol, hit Kevin right in the face. Within the warped orange-red glow around them, shadowy mustard yellow bubbles suddenly began to manifest and pop like fermenting yeast. "Don't even think about catching me slipping up so you can go tattle to my mother," Elijah growled, lowering his voice. His Adam's apple bobbed heavily, and his gaze carried an inescapable domination. "This arranged marriage was our parents' idea. Don't get your hopes up. I will never fall for you. Everyone else bends over backwards trying to get into my bed, yet my mom practically handed me to you. I'll admit, you've got some tricks up your sleeve." His voice was dangerously raspy, like a barbed hook. But because he had lunged forward so aggressively, his already precarious shirt completely fell open. In the warm light, his perfectly sculpted abs gleamed with an inviting, honeyed sheen. Kevin's throat shifted slightly. For a split second, his breathing hitched completely out of his control. Before his brain could even issue the command, his fingertips had already reached out and pressed right against that skin. It was firm, yet surprisingly soft and resilient. Boom. The aggressive, dark red auras clawing through the air instantly short-circuited. A second later, they exploded into a panicked, glittering shower of pink sparks. Elijah's massive frame jolted violently as if head just been electrocuted. A deep, blood-red flush spread from his neck all the way to the tips of his ears at a visible speed. He shrank his shoulders back wildly, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. What are you doing? Do I look like someone you can just touch whenever you want?" Kevin, ever the docile Omega, let a wicked smirk curl at the corner of his lips. Instead of pulling away, his fingertips pressed down hard through the thin fabric, giving it another deliberate squeeze. Oops, my hand just has a mind of its own all of a sudden. But then again, who told you to dress like that? You were practically begging for it. Elijah's eyes instantly went as wide as saucers, the blush at the corners of his eyes practically catching fire. He launched himself up off the couch like a rocket, immediately tripping over his own feet. Stumbling and scrambling, he bolted straight for the bathroom. Watching him run away, Kevin offered a slow, deliberate parting shot. You shouldn't take a bath right after drinking. You know, slam. The bathroom door nearly shattered from the impact. Kevin sighed helplessly. For a top-tier alpha, this guy was ridiculously easy to tease. Kevin settled deep into the sofa, the cold light of his phone screen illuminating his half-amused face. On the screen, a group chat brilliantly named the Alpha Supreme Domination Club was rolling wildly with new messages. Elijah, the group creator, had blindly added the wrong number when he made it. Now, completely oblivious to the fact that his own husband was lurking in the chat, he was happily running his mouth. The screen flashed rapidly. Elijah's icon bounced. Kevin is already totally captivated by my looks. I seduced him on purpose. Once Hez completely obsessed with me, I'm going to bring up a divorce just to make him regret everything. Alan, come on, Elijah. Once a man hits 25, he might as well be 60. If you actually get divorced, who's gonna want a second-hand man? Benson, Alan, you just don't get it. As long as he hasn't lost his V-card, guys would line up for him no matter how many times he's been married. Alan, no way, seriously? Elijah looks like such a player, but deep down he's still a total virgin? Elijah typed furiously. The Omegas waiting in line for me could wrap around the earth 3 times. What do you idiots know? Chastity is a man's best dowry. Back off, I know exactly what I'm doing. Staring at the word chastity on his screen, Kevin couldn't help but burst out laughing. This kid's posturing was literally baked right into his DNA. The scene in Kevin's mind quickly rewound and jumped back in time. He remembered a dim, run-down alleyway, where a bruised and battered little Elijah was backed into a corner by a group of thugs. It was a young Kevin who had shown up, face cold as ice, and scattered the crowd. The memory shifted to a grand, luxurious living room. Aunt Cassie smacked the back of Elijah's head and snatched off his headphones. Elijah, what is wrong with you? He helped you, and you can't even say thank you? Back then, Elijah had grit his teeth, staring absolute daggers at the floor. A humiliating red flush crept up from the base of his neck. After holding it in forever, he finally squeezed out a single word, thanks. Then, snatching his headphones back, he fled straight to his room without looking back. From that day on, the spoiled, constantly praised heir treated Kevin like a thorn in his side. After all, Kevin was the only Omega who had ever seen him at his absolute lowest and most pathetic. Kevin tapped his finger lightly against the word chastity on the screen. The air around him shimmered with a few sly silver specks of light, and the smirk on his lips deepened. In the bathroom, the cold glow of Elijah's phone illuminated his tight jawline as the group chat bubbled wildly. The young master was clearly still brooding over his arranged marriage. He hammered away at his screen. Pay attention to me. My feelings are hurt here. His terrible friends showed absolutely no mercy. Benson and Frank's mocking texts popped up one after another. Hurt? More like you enjoyed getting slapped around. It's so obvious. Your wifey doesn't love you. I told you Kevin was exactly his type. Hez just totally in denial. Seriously, so many people were chasing Kevin back in school. I even shipped him with upperclassman Jesse. Haha. Elijah's brows instantly tied themselves into a dead knot. Hearing the sound of the door moving outside, he frantically slammed his phone against his chest, shooting a hyper-vigilant glare toward the door. Then, acting like a complete thief, he turned sideways and went back to violently mashing his keyboard. Impossible. He literally asked me if I wanted to do it last night. He is madly in love with me. Your precious Jesse ain't got nothing on me. Standing just outside, a teasing glint flashed in Kevin's eyes. His fingers danced lightly over his own phone screen. He switched over to his burner account, Isaac, and strategically dropped a piece of expert advice into the chat. If you want to know if he loves you or not, it's simple. Tease him with your abs. Wear something sheer and barely there. Accidentally release a little bit of your pheromones. You'll definitely win him over. A few seconds later, Elijah dropped a completely eye-searing screenshot into the group chat, a sheer black mesh top that left absolutely nothing to the imagination, complete with 2 wildly reflective body chains. The chat instantly blew up. Amidst a flood of woes and "you sneaky dogs," Kevin remained totally deadpan as he typed out 3 words. Impressive dedication there. The morning kitchen was filled with the smell of burning. Kevin was poking at a charred, blackened lump of a fried egg with his chopsticks, getting ready to feed it to the dog. Mr. Perfect Kevin actually doesn't know how to cook. Elijah leaned against the kitchen doorframe, arms crossed over his chest, a merciless smirk playing on his lips. It's for the dog, not a reward for you. Kevin picked up the plate and walked right past him without a second glance. Elijah ground his teeth. Reaching back, he snatched an apron, tied it on, and completely hijacked the counter. Watch and learn. The master chef will reluctantly make you some noodles. The morning light filtered through the blinds, hitting Elijah perfectly. He had clearly taken the group chat's advice as gospel. His shirt was unbuttoned all the way down to his stomach, allowing the lion's share of his honeyed pecs to flex aggressively in the dappled light. Even the air around them seemed to shimmer with a hazy, intoxicating golden glow, like fermenting champagne, reaching out toward Kevin with an irresistible magnetism. Leaning against the counter, Kevin was quietly enjoying the visual feast. Just as he was getting into it, the phone in his pocket rang abruptly. Kevin, Jesse is flying back today. We're throwing a welcome home party this afternoon. Are you coming? His mother's booming voice leaked from the earpiece, echoing clearly across the kitchen counter. Bang, clang. The spatula in Elijah's hand slammed into the wok like a bomb. The flirty, golden aura in the air was instantly doused in hot oil, exploding into a blinding, hyper-aggressive crimson. The steady kitchen light visibly warped under the sheer, scorching temperature. Sure, what time? I'm free today. Kevin didn't even bat an eye as he agreed. An hour later, Kevin headed downstairs with his jacket. He immediately spotted Elijah, who was supposed to be at the office, glued to the sofa, sitting bolt upright. He was holding a tablet, the upside-down screen casting a ghostly blue light over his incredibly dark, stormy expression. I'm heading out. Don't wait up. Kevin walked toward the door. Where are you going? I'll drive you. Elijah shot to his feet, the crackling red sparks in the air around him still not fully extinguished. No need, I called a cab. Without offering another glance, Kevin turned and shut the door behind him. Inside the private party room, the chandelier gave off an extravagant, icy, white glow. Kevin looked down to check his group messages. His screen was flooded with bright red transferred, $20,000 notifications from Elijah, who was frantically interrogating Benson for the room's address, followed by a desperate, panicked text. You can't just sit back and watch your bro get divorced right after getting married, can you? The private room doors swung open. Wrapped in a sleek black trench coat, Jesse stepped in surrounded by the crowd, looking like a runway model. He lifted his eyelids slightly, his gaze piercing through the room to lock perfectly onto Kevin. Kevin, it's been a long time. Jess's thin lips parted, a flash of dangerous amusement passing through his eyes. Kevin offered a slight nod. You've got to bring your new alpha husband around next time so we can meet him. Someone in the crowd teased. Sure, next time. Kevin smiled faintly. The corners of Jess's mouth instantly pulled down. A low, enigmatic chuckle rumbled from his chest as an icy, suffocating aura suddenly closed in right at the edge of Kevin's seat. The truth or dare spinner spun wildly under the shifting lights. The pointer stopped dead on Jesse. Why did you come back? Jess's gaze nailed directly into Kevin's eyes. He emphasized every single word, for my own happiness. The air in the room felt instantly frozen. Even the soft background music suddenly seemed jarring and harsh. An invisible, creeping frost spread across the table, crawling right up the edges of the wine bottles. In the final round, the pointer aimed straight at Kevin. Dare. Kevin leaned back into his chair, his jawline tracing a cool, unbothered angle. Jesse stood up, his towering shadow instantly engulfing Kevin. He hooked a confident, wicked smirk. That freezing aura of domination manifested into a literal bone-chilling white mist, swirling around the 2 glasses of red wine held in his fingertips. "Drink a lover's toast with me." Arms linked. Sensing something was off, Benson quickly stood up to run interference. "Jesse, man, I don't know about that. Kevin is a married man." Jesse shot Benson a freezing glare before cornering Kevin with his eyes again. The smile completely vanished from his lips, leaving a gaze like an ice-forged blade. "Hez not here. As long as he doesn't find out, it's fine. It's just a glass of wine. Surely he isn't that petty, right?" Leaving absolutely no room for refusal, Jesse shifted his wrist. Without another word, he decisively pressed the frost-chilled glass of red wine right into Kevin's hand. The crimson liquid sloshed violently inside the glass, refracting a shattered, dangerous, and inescapable glare. Thud. A sudden muffled noise from outside the door shattered the suffocating, freezing tension inside the private room. Being closest to the door, Kevin took the opportunity to pull it open and escape the eye of the storm. Down the hallway, a flustered waiter was crouching to pick up dropped items. Standing opposite him was a towering man dressed entirely in black sportswear, a baseball cap pulled incredibly low over his face. Seeing Kevin, the man panicked and kept his head down, trying to slip away. But even wrapped in those heavy shadows, Kevin would recognize that exact silhouette anywhere. Kevin closed the distance in a few strides, using his body to block the path. A teasing glint hid in his eyes. "Elijah, what are you doing here?" The man froze, then stiffly pulled off his sunglasses. The overhead hallway light hit his face, a face desperately trying to maintain its usual haughty pride, yet betraying a highly suspicious red flush at the corners of his eyes. He cast a guilty glance over Kevin's shoulder into the room, then raised his voice to mask his panic. What? "I'm grabbing dinner with my bros. If you can be here, why can't I?" An imperceptible smirk pulled at the corner of Kevin's mouth. Crossing his arms, he leaned back casually. "Want to join us? I can introduce you to everyone." Fine. Since you're inviting me so sincerely, I guess I can make an exception." Elijah's jawline tightened as he let out a pompous, theatrical scoff. But in the few steps it took to walk back to the room, Elijah's fingers seemed to develop a mind of their own. They slid smoothly against Kevin's side, slipping their hands together and firmly intertwining their fingers into an inescapable grip. By the time they pushed the doors open, they were perfectly locked hand in hand. Kevin didn't pull away. After all, considering the way this top-tier alpha had looked when he took off his sunglasses, with those red-rimmed eyes looking absolutely devastated, if Kevin actually shook him off, the guy would probably go hide somewhere and secretly cry. Inside, every pair of eyes instantly zeroed in on their clasped hands. The air immediately thickened with a knowing, gossipy vibe. Kevin pulled Elijah to the seat right next to him. Facing the teasing stares, his tone was so flawlessly natural, it sounded rehearsed. "My husband keeps a pretty tight leash. He just had to tag along for his own peace of mind. You guys don't mind an extra guest, do you? You guys are so cute. You couldn't even stand being apart for a few hours, huh?" The round of introductions began. When it was Jess's turn, Elijah, who had been lazily leaning against the back of his chair, instantly tensed. The muscles in his back drew tight as a fully drawn bow. Jesse stood up. That icy, chilling aura that always surrounded him violently spiked the moment it brushed against Elijah, sharpening into absolute, bone-piercing frost. "Hello. I'm Jesse, Kevin's upperclassman, and his close friend of many years." Elijah shot to his feet. A scorching, orange-red glow of magma instantly erupted into the air, violently clashing against the frost. "Hey, Elijah," Kevin's husband. Their hands met in midair. Elijah's eyes locked on like a hawk zeroing in on its prey, his knuckles turning totally white from the crushing grip. Jesse, however, maintained a perfectly polite, unfazed smile. In the space between them, the bone-chilling frost and the air-warping embers of magma collided. The phantom projections of their clashing pheromones tore at each other in a frantic, silent war of absolute domination. Sitting nearby, Benson, who never missed a chance to enjoy the drama, let out a loud, highly amused snort. He was immediately silenced by a murderous, death-ray glare from Elijah. Watching the explosive standoff, Kevin slowly raised the glass of red wine from earlier. He turned to Elijah. "I got a dare a minute ago to drink a lover's toast." Since you're here, why don't you do the honors and take the toast with Jesse for me? A muscle in Elijah's cheek twitched violently. He forced the words out through gritted teeth, one by one. With pleasure. Jess's eyes darkened slightly, and the surrounding frost retreated half an inch. If Kevin doesn't want to drink it, we don't have to enforce the penalty. The crowd instantly booed playfully. Playing favorites, I see. By the time the dinner ended, the early autumn night breeze carried a distinct chill. Standing at the restaurant entrance, Jesse rubbed his temples. The look he gave Kevin carried a subtle, almost imperceptible vulnerability. Kevin, is it convenient to give me a ride back? Before Kevin could even open his mouth, a crushing pressure clamped down on his palm. Elijah squeezed his hand so hard his knuckles ached. A completely lifeless, 0-degree smile plastered itself across Elijah's face. His towering frame shifted, completely blocking Jess's line of sight to Kevin. My wife doesn't drive. I'll take you back, Jesse. It's much safer that way. I highly doubt you know where I live, Elijah, Jesse replied, his tone entirely flat. Besides, I was hoping to catch up with Kevin. Alone. Kevin was shaking his head frantically in his mind. He had absolutely zero intention of agreeing to that. What kind of catching up requires me to not be there? Elijah's smile stretched even wider, but a dangerous, dark red fire was already roaring in his eyes. The air itself felt scorched by the inescapable, searing heat of his jealousy. Nothing special. Just everyday things. Jesse deflected effortlessly. Seeing that they were about to throw down again, Kevin stepped right between them, looking up at Elijah. Don't you still have friends eating inside? Shouldn't you go back and keep them company? Elijah's expression stiffened for a microsecond. But there was absolutely no way in hell he was leaving his Omega alone with a romantic rival. Without batting an eye, the lie rolled right off his tongue. I'll just shoot them a text. They don't need me. Before the words even finished dropping, he moved with lightning speed to yank the passenger door open, offering a highly exaggerated, gentlemanly bow. After you, darling. Jesse, I'll have to trouble you to take the back seat. Benson, who had spent the entire night acting as background scenery, weakly raised his hand. Could you maybe drop me off too? The atmosphere inside the car was beyond bizarre. The vehicle glided smoothly through the bustling downtown blocks, passing right by Kevin and Jess's old university campus. Sitting in the shadows of the back seat, Jesse suddenly spoke up, his voice tinged with a warm, nostalgic affection. I remember you used to love the pizza from this spot back in college, Kevin. I can't believe it's still open after all these years. Kevin looked out the window at the familiar glowing sign and casually replied, Yeah, their food is actually really good. Elijah, do you want to try some? Driving the car, Elijah lit up as if his entire soul had just been recharged. The sheer joy in his voice nearly blew the roof off. Hell yeah, I'll turn around and grab some right now. Are you still hungry, Jesse? I'll buy some extra so you can take it home with you. Looking at Elijah's gloating, wildly smug expression in the rearview mirror, Jesse smiled faintly. Sure. I appreciate it, Elijah. Late that night, only a single, warm yellow floor lamp illuminated the apartment living room. Elijah was sprawled out across the sofa in an absolute starfish pose. The cold glow of his phone screen lit up his wildly expressive, triumphant face. Like a complete thief, he kept sneaking sidelong glances at Kevin, who was sitting quietly in the armchair. The group chat was refreshing at the speed of light. Elijah, Benson, did you see that? He cares about me. He asked me to step in and drink for him, and he even asked if I wanted pizza. Oh my God, my wife cares about me. Benson. Oh, sure, your wife cares about you. Wonder who was grinding their teeth down to dust from pure jealousy before they showed up to the party? Elijah typed so frantically his fingers practically left after images. Jealous? Me? I wasn't jealous. Alan, just admit it, Elijah. Keep being this stubborn, and your wife is going to run off one of these days. Frank, ooh, wouldn't it be funny if he acts tough on the outside but begs to be his wife's lapdog behind closed doors? Caleb, wait. Is this some kind of new kink? Keep talking, taking notes. Elijah replied furiously, ahem, as if. I was just testing the waters to see if he was into me. I never said I was into him. I will never fall for Kevin, and am sure as hell not letting an Omega ride on top of me. Benson, Care to clarify exactly what Hez writing? Elijah, can you guys please bleach your dirty minds? Leaning back in his chair, Kevin stared at the stubbornly hypocritical group chat, a faint smile touching his eyes. As he read, drowsiness slowly washed over him, and his eyelids gently drifted shut. In his hazy state, the room grew so quiet that only the sound of steady breathing remained. Suddenly, a pair of scorching hot hands gently cupped his cheeks. The next second, a rush of weightlessness hit him. Kevin was swept right up off his feet, landing securely against a remarkably broad, firm chest. That familiar, blistering heat of those pheromones instantly enveloped him. Acting purely on instinct, Kevin nuzzled a little deeper into that radiating warmth. The arms holding him instantly tightened, gripping him so fiercely it was as if the alpha wanted to press him straight into his very soul. From above, a deeply satisfied, rumbling chuckle vibrated from the back of his throat. My wife is so sweet and soft, and his pheromones still smell like sweet peaches. I love it. Morning sunlight sliced through the blinds, casting sharp lines of light and shadow across the floor. The sound of running water in the bathroom had just stopped when the unguarded, passcode-free phone on the nightstand suddenly lit up. Smacked right in the center of the screen was a glaring notification. Elijah, you'll be in the area this weekend. Are you free? I'd love to treat you to dinner. Leaning against the headboard, Kevin casually swiped open Elijah's screen with his long fingers and tapped straight into the photo album without a second thought. The bathroom door slid open, and Elijah strolled out lazily, his hair still wet. The moment his eyes landed on the glowing screen in Kevin's hands, his shoulders hitched. Immediately, he tilted his chin up in a wildly exaggerated display of arrogance. The air around him flared with a puffed-up, golden aura of total bluffing. Kevin, are you actually snooping through my phone? Whatever, it doesn't even matter. I have absolutely nothing to hide. Kevin didn't even bat an eye. Someone named Sean wants to take you to dinner this weekend. Let me introduce you. Elijah closed the distance in a few long strides, planting his hands firmly on the edge of the bed. He brought with him a wave of heat radiating an inescapable domination. Hez, a junior from my college fraternity, and we are very, very close. This childish provocation was clearly a lingering side effect of Jesse rattling him the night before. Seeing that Kevin wasn't taking the bait, Elijah's gaze slowly drifted downward until he finally registered exactly what was scrolling across the screen. Boom. That puffed-up, golden aura instantly short-circuited, erupting into a massive, panicked shower of fiery red sparks. Elijah's face visibly flushed a deep, mortified maroon. He lunged forward to snatch the phone away. Kevin dodged it effortlessly and, with a backhand motion, locked a vice-like grip on Elijah's trembling, highly stressed wrist. Why are there so many pictures of me in here? A wicked, teasing glint surfaced in Kevin's eyes. He leaned right up against that burning red ear and breathed out a soft, taunting sigh. The oldest one is even a side profile of me at the English speech contest. Wow, Elijah. So you've had a crush on me since back then? Kevin deliberately shoved the phone right in his face, waving it around. It's just a shame you managed to take such terrible pictures of my gorgeous face. Is this what they call the boyfriend perspective? Reacting like a cat whose tail had just been stepped on, Elijah violently yanked his hand back and snatched the phone. He stiffened his neck, still stubbornly refusing to admit defeat as he glared at Kevin from the corner of his eye. Even the scorching red aura around him was twisting itself into frantic, tangled knots. Shut up. I was just keeping a close eye on you to make sure you weren't scheming anything against me. Kevin dragged out a long, deliberate drawl. Oh, is that so? It is. That weekend, at the upscale bistro. Pushing open the glass doors, Kevin immediately spotted them at a window seat. And Omega was clinging to Elijah's arm like absolute superglue. Elijah's brow was furrowed so deeply it could crush a fly, and the air around him warped with highly irritated, dark red ripples. He pushed the guy away once, only for the Omega to shamelessly stick right back onto him. Catching Kevin's gaze, Elijah shot up, as if he'd been electrocuted. In one incredibly smooth, flawless motion, he pulled out the chair next to him and plastered himself tightly against Kevin's side. Across the table, Sean instantly plastered on a completely flawless smile, immediately rolling out the classic manipulative innocent act, sweetly calling out Kevin, He reached right across the table, piling all sorts of rich, heavy foods onto Elijah's plate. He didn't forget to add a final touch of pure nostalgia, saying, "I specifically ordered the shrimp for you. I wonder if they make it well here." Kevin stared blankly at the overflowing plate before simply picking it up and swapping it out. He pushed a clean plate in front of Elijah instead. "You must have the wrong guy, Sean. Elijah is highly allergic to seafood." The smile on Sean's face instantly cracked. He choked on his water, coughing violently, yet still made a desperate, dedicated attempt to save face. Hack. I've just been so busy with work lately. My brain is a little scrambled." On the drive home, the night breeze rolled in, and the halo of the streetlights washed over Elijah's tense jawline. He looked exactly like a giant dog that knew it had done something wrong. His eyes darted nervously all over Kevin's face, desperately trying to catch even the slightest hint of jealousy. "You aren't mad, are you? What is there to be mad about?" Elijah froze, a flash of pure disbelief crossing his eyes as his brows knitted together. "Seriously?" "Seriously." Kevin sighed, casually straightening his cuffs. "Next time you hire an actor, Elijah, please get a professional. At the very least, review your allergy history with him first." The air in the car instantly ground to a halt. Elijah abruptly dropped his head, his lips pressing into a painfully thin, pale line. A wave of utterly aggrieved, devastating crimson flushed the corners of his eyes. His voice was muffled, sounding like it was being squeezed straight from his chest. "I didn't hire an actor. He really was just passing by." Seeing how completely shattered the alpha looked, Kevin reached out and gently tugged at his fingertips. "I have something I want to tell you." Who knew that single sentence would act like a lit fuse? Elijah's head snapped up, a desperate, frantic storm of dark gold erupting in his eyes. His hands clamped down in a death grip over Kevin's wrists, his voice cracking violently from sheer, unadulterated panic. "I will never agree to a divorce. That precious Jesse of yours isn't as young as me. Hez not as handsome as me. Hez not as rich as me. His body isn't as good as mine. He can't cook like me. And his stamina is definitely not as good as mine." His eyes were rimmed with a furious red. His Adam's apple bobbed heavily as he forced the tears right back down his throat. Gritting his teeth, his entire face warped from the absurdity of his own compromise. He put on a desperately magnanimous, ready-to-die front. "Fine. You can't force love. If you really, truly like him, then I can be your side piece. Just make time to come see me once a week." Kevin's eyes went wide in utter shock. He simply couldn't keep up with that flawlessly smooth, yet completely unhinged train of logic. Before Kevin could even open his mouth to explain, Elijah had already yanked the car door open, practically dragging and shoving Kevin straight into the passenger seat. With a heavy thud, the door slammed shut. The very next second, the tires shrieked violently against the asphalt. Driven by a reckless, desperate bravado, the roaring engine tore right through the cold night wind of the streets. Kevin had barely pushed open the bedroom door when he saw Elijah pacing at the foot of the bed like a restless, caged beast in the dim light. In midair, the projected chat bubbles from his phone screen flashed wildly with his every movement. "You guys need to analyze this for me. What on earth did Kevin mean by 'I have something I want to tell you'?" Elijah typed frantically, his massive exclamation points looking like they were about to punch right through the screen. Benson's mocking text immediately followed. "Just admit it, man. You are totally obsessed with him." With one hand, Kevin switched over to his burner account, Isaac. A wickedly amused glint flashed in his eyes as his fingertips tapped lightly. "Use the same method as last time. Keep seducing him." Ding! The screen instantly erupted in a blinding, glittering gold coin effect as Elijah smashed a massive money transfer right into the chat box. The scene shifted. The bathroom door slid open with a sharp swish, bringing with it a highly aggressive, scorching wave of heat. The warm overhead light seemed to turn into a focused spotlight at that exact moment, hitting Elijah perfectly. His broad shoulders and narrow waist were encased in a highly provocative, sheer black mesh. The fabric was as thin as a cicada's wings, allowing the tight, sculpted lines of his abs to peek through with his every powerful stride. Resting against his honeyed skin was a cold, silver diamond-studded body chain. It swayed with his movements, refracting a blinding and dangerous icy light. The air around them ignited instantly. Visible waves of orange-red heat climbed the walls like frantic, sprawling vines. Kevin's Adam's apple bobbed heavily. A flash of panic crossed his eyes, and he instinctively wanted to step back. What? What are you doing? Like a leopard locking onto its prey, Elijah closed the distance in the blink of an eye until they were practically nose to nose. His long fingers firmly grasped Kevin's wrist, pressing it against his own scorching abs with an inescapable, deeply alluring magnetism. Darling, do you like me like this? Before Kevin could even answer, that blazing orange-red heat wave swallowed him whole. Elijah dipped his head, capturing his lips with pure, breathless domination. Out of nowhere, crystal-clear bursts of amber light exploded into the air, the sweet, unmistakable scent of citrus pheromones. They materialized into golden liquid, like visual effects, dancing wildly around their tangled breaths. Kevin's gaze completely melted down in the sheer, blistering heat. He fiercely gripped the black mesh at Elijah's waist, tilting his head up to bite right back. The blazing orange-red flames and the golden amber sparks clashed and melted together in the dim bedroom. The air grew so thick it felt like spun syrup, and even the halo of the bedside lamp warped into an intoxicating pink vortex. The next day, the midday sun cut across the messy bedsheets. Kevin was so exhausted that even his fingertips flushed a drained pink. His hand rested mindlessly against those firm, sculpted abs. Just as he tried to pull it away, a deeply satisfied, low chuckle rumbled from above. Elijah had woken up at some point and was watching Kevin with a half smile. Kevin gave a light cough to ease the awkwardness. Didn't you say I looked completely average and that you'd never fall for me? Why were you working so hard last night? Darling, I was wrong. I was just being stubborn. I am completely crazy about you. Elijah nuzzled right into the crook of Kevin's neck like a giant, affectionate dog, while sweet pink phantom illusions of peaches floated through the air. As he spoke, he pulled out yet another ridiculously skimpy piece of fabric like a magic trick and smoothly put it on. How about this set? Does my darling like this one? After several consecutive days of pure absurdity, the bathroom door opened once again. Holding his practically broken waist, Kevin's eyes widened in sheer horror. Elijah was wearing fuzzy black cat ears on his head, and behind him, a black cat tail was swinging through the air so fiercely it left an S-shaped afterimage. Does my kitty like this? Elijah smiled, absolutely beaming as pink bubbles practically bubbled out of the air around him. In practicing celibacy starting today, Kevin scrambled and crawled frantically toward the edge of the bed. A dizzying rush of weightlessness hit him. The massive shadow pounced, completely inescapable. Kevin's vision flipped upside down, and in an instant, he was pressed deep into the soft mattress. An airtight kiss swallowed every last one of his protests under an irresistible magnetism. Sometime later, the phone on the nightstand began to vibrate like crazy. Kevin lazily propped himself up on one arm. Glancing at the screen, he deliberately dragged out his vowels as he read aloud. Now, who was it that said a man over 25 is basically 60? I am literally a god descending to earth. My stamina is just like an 18-year-old's. The air suddenly fell dead silent. Elijah, who had just been preparing to fish for compliments, looked as if someone had hit the pause button on him. He stiffly turned his neck, looking at his own phone, and then at Kevin's screen. A Category 10 earthquake erupted in his pupils. Shock, intense guilt, and pure embarrassment twisted together on his rapidly reddening face. Even the cat ears on his head visibly drooped down. How? How did you know? Kevin raised an eyebrow, tapping his fingertip against the account on the screen. I'm Isaac in your group. When you add people, do you only look at their profile pictures and not their names? The color instantly drained from Elijah's face before rushing back with a vengeance. He stuttered, So, you knew everything right from the start? His massive frame curled into a pathetic, aggrieved ball as he grabbed his own hair in pure frustration. If I had known that, I wouldn't have been so damn stubborn in the first place. The pink bubbles around them instantly dissolved into a soft, warm, golden dust. Kevin sighed. Leaning over, he pressed a gentle kiss against that highly aggrieved, handsome face. You are just you. If I didn't actually like you, do you really think I would have agreed to this arranged marriage? The moment the words landed, boom, That golden dust instantly reignited into a frantic, blazing storm of orange-red sparks. Tears of pure emotion welled up in Elijah's eyes, yet his gaze burned as bright and starving as a wolf's. Woo-woo, I love you so much, darling. Let's keep going then? Didn't you just stop? Every remaining refusal was once again swallowed whole in the rapidly heating vortex of light and shadow.
And that brings our story to an end. Kevin and Elijah are seriously the absolute sweetest together. One is a stubborn, pure-hearted young wolf, and the other is a gentle yet secretly cunning hunter. The irresistible magnetism between them feels like pure fate. Just imagine it, a guy whose pride is sky-high, swearing up and down that Hes not into you, yet Hes secretly obsessing over your every move. He even goes out of his way to cook for you with his shirt casually unbuttoned, just to show off his abs and get your attention. He even secretly buys sheer mesh tops, hoping you'll touch him. Who wouldn't fall for a pure-hearted, prideful alpha like that? The clumsy way he tries to play it cool on the surface, while his pheromones are practically doing a desperate peacock strut to win you over, it's such a vivid picture. Every time he gets called out, his ears turn beet red, and he starts stammering total nonsense. It's such a massive contrast to his fierce, intimidating exterior that you just can't help but squeal at how incredibly cute he is. No wonder Kevin wasn't fazed by Elijah's bad attitude in the slightest. He simply pulled the strings from behind the scenes, personally coaching his own husband on exactly how to seduce him. Kevin's effortless emotional stability and Elijah's chaotic, loud energy are an absolutely perfect match. Would you want a partner like Elijah? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. Our next story is going to be even more exciting.